Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is the inaugural Sports 2.0 show. Been a long time coming. Very excited to be with you. Zach Weiss. We'll have Dan Bradley, Griffin Carroll, Samir Kumar, and Tan as well. We'll be talking hockey, NFL, NBA, and everyone loves First Take. Wanted a First Take style debate on a topic that three of the panelists have no idea about just yet. But starting things off, I'm talking about my favorite NBA team. Been a fan for 18 years. The Cleveland Cavaliers. They're a team that has had LeBron James twice. They won a championship. They've had 60-win seasons. They had Mark Price, Brad Daugherty, Larry Nance. But they've also done some very questionable things over the years. And it's not their fault. Let's start with an example of what I'm talking about. There are four players that could have had very promising NBA careers in Cleveland, and it didn't pan out for one reason or another. Andrew Bynum. He was great with the Lakers. He won championships. He was Kobe's guy alongside with Powell and Lamar Odom. They had a great team. Andrew Bynum came to Cleveland in 2013-14. The Cavs might have been building something, right? Kyrie Irving. They got Luol Deng on that team. Andrew Bynum decided to just start messing around. He had a 2010 and 5 block game, and it was incredible. He looked like he was turning a corner. This Andrew Bynum guy that blew out his knee and then went bowling while he was rehabbing, looked to finally be back. Unfortunately, he was taking half-court shots in practice, not passing the ball. The Cavs traded him within a week. Guy puts up 20 points, 10 boards, 5 blocks. He's going to catch your attention. Before we knew it, he was gone. That's example one. Example two, a fellow by the name of Dajuan Wagner from Camden, New Jersey. His son is number 3 ranked high school player in the country. He's the number 1 player in New Jersey in his age group, and he's plays for the 3rd best team in all of New Jersey, 40th in the country. He's got talent. We're going to hope he stays healthy because Dajuan Wagner Sr. came in with so much promise. He averaged 13 as a rookie, even though he only shot 37%. He played just 44 games alongside LeBron James during his incredible rookie season. LeBron's, of course. Wagner had all this potential to be this breakout scorer to fill so many voids, and he just never could be. Colitis would end his career early. He played just 1 game for the Golden State Warriors before having to call it quits at age 23. Dajuan Wagner, another Cav. What if? How great he could have been if only health was on his side. Number 3, Kevin Porter Jr. For me, now this just hits home because watching the G League bubble, Kevin Porter Jr. was incredible. What more could you want? He's putting up triple-doubles. He was playing 40 minutes a game. The Rio Grande Vipers were no joke. I can't honestly say I know where their standing is right now in the G League bubble, but I know they won games because the Cavs had traded him to Houston. Played 50 games for Cleveland his rookie season. He had a 30-point showing against Miami. Terrific assist guy. He had 3 or 4 poster dunks. He was athletic as they come, but off-court and legal trouble. He's actually having some mental health issues. He had tweeted some suicidal thoughts in October of this past year, leaving us to wonder, is he okay? Obviously, very thankful he's still alive, that he's in a good place mentally, and that he was playing so well in the G League bubble. But obviously, what's going to happen in Cleveland? Cavs got Taurean Prince from Brooklyn. They gave Kevin's locker to him. And from there, well, a tantrum happened, and now Kevin is in Houston. But I wish him the best. I just hate that it didn't work in Cleveland. One more guy to talk about before we go to Dan Bradley to talk some NHL midseason awards is Ron Harper. Anyone that's watched Keenan and Kel knows that Ron Harper can act. Slipped on Kel's orange soda at Rigby's very early in the episode, leading to some trouble for Keenan and Kel, leading to a hospital visit of them to Ron Harper. And it's also funny, Ron Harper was on the Bulls, and there was no mention of Michael Jordan in this episode. So you look back, Ron Harper averaged 7 points per game. I say it's suspect that Kel says Ron Harper was his favorite player before Pippen, before Jordan. Rodman wasn't there yet, before anyone else on the Bulls. Anyway, Ron Harper in Cleveland was a great player. 23-5-5 as a rookie. That's better than LeBron's rookie numbers. It's better than Zion Williamson's limited season rookie numbers. It's better than anyone probably except for MJ or any star of the 60s, 70s, or 80s. That's a lot of names, but he started off incredibly well. The Cavs decided to give up on Ron Harper, who averaged better than 2 steals a game 4 straight years because, hey, this prospect from Italy, Danny Ferry, looks pretty good. Danny Ferry spent 10 years in never digits, while Ron Harper ended up winning, 3 championships alongside MJ's Bulls. Imagine what he could have been in Cleveland in his prime. as this terrific player. But anyway, we talked KPJ, we talked Juwan Wagner, we talked Andrew Bynum, we talked Kevin Porter Jr. Why don't we bring in Dan Bradley, who is our resident hockey expert. He's going to be talking about his predictions and thoughts on the NHL midseason awards as the season winds on. Dan is tremendous with his hockey knowledge. It's going to be great. Dan, great to have you
Zach,
on.
there we go. Now we got you. Well, appreciate you having me on tonight. Wanted to talk some mid-season NHL awards and wanted to start with the Calder Trophy Rookie of the Year honors coming up. We're about halfway through the season at this point. Most teams hitting that 28-game mark this week, a couple early next. So it's about time to start looking at those mid-season awards. And starting with the Calder Trophy for Rookie of the Year, this is going to be one of the most closely contested races, I think, now through the end of the season. Rookies have started to get their feet wet at the NHL level. One rookie that I really am keeping my eye on is Kirill Kaprizov of the Minnesota Wild. 6 goals, 13 assists so far this season with 19 points. He leads all rookies. But there are a few others who are really close on his tail. In the skaters category, Tim Stützle from the Ottawa Senators, 6 goals and 9 assists on the season for him. Pius Suter of the Chicago Blackhawks, 8 goals, 5 assists. His 8 goals lead all rookies. I think he could be in the conversation at the end of things. But recently, 2 goaltenders have played their way into the conversation as well. Kaprizov's teammate with the Minnesota Wild, Kaapo Kähkönen, 10 wins, 10-4-0 record for Kähkönen this season. He leads all goaltenders in save percentage and goals against average. He kind of took the running away from Kevin Lankinen a little bit, Chicago Blackhawks. A 9-4-4 record for Lankinen. Lankinen and Kaprizov were the 2 front runners to start the year. Kähkönen has played his way into that conversation as well. And with Stützle, Suter, even Nils Höglander with the Vancouver Canucks, this is going to be a really close race now through the end of the season. Tying in with goaltenders there as well, the Vezina Trophy for top goaltender. This is really a 2-horse race at this point between Andrei Vasilevsky of the Tampa Bay Lightning and Marc-Andre Fleury of the Vegas Golden Knights. Vasilevsky has a slight edge over Fleury in terms of wins and goals saved above expected. Vasilevsky, 12.9 goals saved above expected. Fleury just at 9. Vasilevsky leads the league in that category. But then when you look at save percentage and goals against average, Fleury is putting up some incredible numbers. He's later in his career, but with a 9.43 save percentage and a 1.57 goals against average. Vegas and Tampa Bay, 2 teams that are going to be right there at the end of the season. I'm not quite ready to say just yet that that's my Stanley Cup matchup prediction. However, I do think both of those teams will be in the Final Four when all is said and done. And lastly, wanted to go over the Hart Trophy for NHL MVP. Again, this one I have down to 2 at the moment. Of course, anything can still happen over the course of the end of the season. Connor McDavid, 15 goals, 30 assists. He's the best player in the NHL right now. And with 45 points in 27 games on an incredible points per game pace, we haven't seen points per game like this since Gretzky back in the 90s. I mean, this is incredible stuff that he is putting up. But right on his tail is Patrick Kane of the Chicago Blackhawks. Kane, 11 goals and 27 assists. He's 7 points behind McDavid, but Kane is really almost carrying the Blackhawks this season. I've been really impressed with his game and with all of the injuries that the Chicago Blackhawks have had as well. Brent Seabrook announcing his retirement. Kirby Dach has been out of the lineup. Top to bottom, so many injuries this season, and yet the Blackhawks are 4th in that Central Division. It's going to be a fight to the end, but I think the Blackhawks are going to make it into the playoffs this season. And if they do, Kane should absolutely be in the Hart Trophy conversation at the end of the season.
Yeah, no question, Dan. Some great stuff there. It's going to be a very exciting awards race, the NHL. I have no question about that. As a Sabres fan, I can't smile about much. I can't sit here and say the playoffs are inside. I can just say I hope that Jack Eichel doesn't get sent packing, because I think that is a regrettable move for a team that really isn't going anywhere. But
that might be a conversation on our next episode. We'll have to do some planning on that, but I think there's a chance that Jack Eichel could be on the move. So we may have to have a conversation about that soon.
No, we certainly will, Dan. It's been great having you. And everybody, I know I love that with Dan. We're going to hear a lot more from Dan when we get to our debate section. We're going to hear now from an NBA expert. I mean, he's an expert. If the word betting is in the title, he is an expert. I've had him on my podcast a couple of times. You just talk with him. He exudes confidence, knowledge, and such an understanding of sports betting. This is our guy, Griffin Carroll. They call him Griffey Bets in the Twitter sphere, and we all call him that in our phones as well. Griffin here to give us what NBA games we should be betting on. So without further ado, the Griffey Bets picks of the day.
Thanks, Zach. Great to be here. So I've just started to dip my toes into NBA betting a little bit, and really my approach is to find overlap between good offenses and bad defenses, or vice versa, and really focus on over-unders. And I think it goes without saying that a good offense against a bad defense is going to lead to some points. But what I'm trying to do here, NBA is such a complex game, and there are so many metrics out there that it can actually be a little bit overwhelming. So I'm trying to consolidate my offensive rankings, and I'm looking at, points per game, of course, effective field goal percentage, and offensive efficiency. Equally weight those three and give an average ranking there. And then on the defensive side, again, total points per game, defensive efficiency, and opponent's effective field goal percentage. So once you average that out, you can sort of get a good view of how these teams shape up. Because points per game alone is never going to tell the entire story. Yep. So there's some merit there to averaging it out, because if you look at the five best teams hitting their overs, all five come in on my top 10 of offensive rankings. And if you look at the worst 5 teams against over-unders, 3 of them have a top 10 defense. So there's some merit there. And beyond that, you can also talk about pace of play, which is another thing I've been digging into. And, there's so many ways you can calculate pace, but the way I'm looking at it is possessions per game and field goals attempted per game, because when you want to bet an over, it comes down to opportunity. So the more times they're possessing the ball, the more times they're shooting, the more likely it might go in. So both pace and those offensive and defensive rankings are what I'm looking at as I finally dip my toes in NBA betting. I've got 2 games I have my eye on this week. Tonight, the Wizards and Grizzlies, over 237, which sounds a little menacing. But both are top 5 in pace. The Wizards are the 3rd worst defense. So simple recipe there, just banking on opportunity, get the ball moving. Tomorrow night, I have one I feel great about, which is the Timberwolves Pelicans over. Both bottom 10 defenses. The Pelicans are the 6th best offense, and the Timberwolves have the number 1 pace of play. And it helps that the Pelicans are the best team against overs this year. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm breaking down the entire weekend slate, so stay tuned on Twitter at Griffey Bets, and more to come.
Yeah, I like the Wizards-Grizzlies pick. First off, it's a rare case of 2 teams with rhyming names, the Wiz versus the Grizz. Also, exactly. The Wizards have been playing great ball of late, and a team like the Grizzlies who does defend well, I don't see them slowing them down, so I like that over. And Chris Finch, Timberwolves coach, Dan is a huge Timberwolves fan. Chris Finch.
I would use that term loosely. Do they really deserve having us as fans now, the way they've been playing? I mean, it's a little tricky.
Yeah, they're 7-29. I do have 1 win over my Cavs, so everybody can brag over everybody else in that regard. But I will say this, and why I agree there. The Pelicans have a great offense, Griffin. And, you look at Minnesota. Chris Finch, I don't know how this is going to be possible, because I've watched enough Timberwolves games, and I still am learning about the players as I go, because they don't seem to know how to manage rotations. Chris Finch said he's going to quote-unquote shore up the rotation. I don't know what that means, but I'm curious, because when you're 7-29, shouldn't you be giving new guys opportunities? But either way, I think your head's in a great place with this, and I'm very excited to see the picks you're making in the coming days. I'll say that, and I know Dan and Tanner, who we're going to introduce in a second, would agree. So shout out to you, Griffey Bets.
Thanks, Zach. We'll see. And, I should preface, they're coming off an all-star break, a week off. I know when I come off a week off, I'm a little stale. So, don't go crazy, but keep your eye on it and let them get back into the swing of things, and much more to come.
Yeah, no question. I'm very excited to see where that goes. Now we're going to be talking baseball. It's been all about Tampa Bay for the last 15 months. The Rays made the World Series. The Lightning won it all. The Bucks won it all. The Raptors are giving Tampa Bay NBA representation. They'll be in the playoffs. We'll see where they to talk about the LA Dodgers. Will there be a Tampa Bay team getting there? That's for another day. With Tanner Kern, can anybody in the National League stand up to the mighty, mighty Dodgers?
Thanks, Zach. I appreciate it. I just want to address Tampa Bay first. Tampa Bay lost in the World Series last year, and they took the strategy this offseason that we're going to get worse and try to win another World Series. So I don't think they'll be anywhere near the postseason unless Carlos Stanton breaks his legs and Aaron Judge breaks his wrist or something like that, which is a possibility in New York. You never know. But let's talk about the National League. Now, we got a great race in the National League. I'm so excited for baseball season this year and to watch this race. You got the LA Dodgers, the San Diego Padres, the Atlanta Braves, and the New York Mets. The Mets are actually good this year again, which it just makes baseball fun. I love when the Mets are good, and I know a lot of people do. You know, each one of these teams, they have something about them that a fan can point to and say they're going to win a World Series. They're going to win the National League. Now, the Dodgers are obviously the heavy favorite. If you watch baseball, you know this. If you don't watch baseball, you probably know this because this is all baseball is talking about. You know, LA, they got the most complete lineup in baseball, pitching, hitting. They're legit. There's just no other way to say it. The Padres, they got improved pitching, got two really good guys, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And the left side of the infield, they're paying those guys more than a lot of teams in the major leagues are paying their entire roster. So shout out to San Diego going to try to get the Dodgers this year. You got the Mets. The Mets got a lot of power, and they got Jacob deGrom. Anytime you got Jacob deGrom on the mound, you got a chance to win. They also got Frankie Lindor. I mean, the guy was just meant for New York. You see him in a New York jersey. It's like, why was he ever playing in Cleveland? He is a big market guy. It needs to be with these guys, and he could lead them to the promised land this year. And then you got the Braves. I like to call the Braves the baby Dodgers. They're just not as good as the Dodgers, but they do have a chance if some things happen. So let's start breaking down the Dodgers lineup first of all. You got Mookie Betts in the top of the order. Mookie Wood, that's what they were renaming LA to as soon as he signed his deal with the Dodgers. I see Ryan just gave me a comment down there. Go Cardinals. Hey, they might win the NL Central, but they are not going anywhere near the World Series of the NL pennant this year. Mookie Betts, man, 4 Silver Slugger awards, 5 Golden Gloves. He's an MVP. Amazing. You got Corey Seager, Justin Turner, Cody Bellinger, an MVP from 2019, a Golden Glove, a Silver Slugger. He is the man. He's my favorite player in the league. And then you got Will Smith. Will Smith's an underrated guy. I think he's one of the best catchers in the league, though. And I think he's only got 2 or 3 years of service time. So he's going to be really beneficial for them. And this is where the Dodgers thrive at the bottom of the order. Max Muncy, AJ Pollock, and Chris Taylor. Their projections, according to RotoChamp, 31 home runs from Muncy, 27 from Pollock, and 17 from Taylor. That kind of production at the bottom order, you just don't get in baseball. So I'm really excited to see those guys play. The Dodgers are supposed to hit a combined 217 home runs this year. Just let that sink in. 217 home runs. Baseball is won with home runs and strikeouts. And these guys are hitting 217. And when you go to their pitching rotation, they're also going to get a lot of strikeouts. Trevor Bauer joins the crew in LA. First of all, shout out Rachel Cuba. It might be his agent. It might be his girlfriend. We don't know. But shout out to her getting him $102 million over 3 years. He is going to join this rotation and fit in great. Got Clayton Kershaw at the top. Now, after Kershaw wins that World Series last year, a weight is lifted off his shoulders. I think he's going to have another Hall of Fame career in the second half of his year. I think he's got another 5 years left probably to pitch at a dominant level. And I think he's just going to pitch a lot better because he doesn't have the criticism coming in, oh, you can't pitch in the playoffs. He proved last year that he can pitch in the playoffs. Trevor Bauer, the reigning Cy Young Award winner, I mean, just meant for a big market, just like Francisco Lindor in New York. Walker Buehler, he will be the future of LA. He is the next Clayton Kershaw in LA. Julio Urias, still got a lot to prove, but he's talented. And then you got David Price, a Cy Young winner, probably the highest paid pitcher in the league that is not very reputable at this day and age. But again, he's still a Cy Young winner. He's put a lot of great innings together. So, watch out for Price after opting out last year. I don't know how he's going to play this year, but we will see. Then you go to the Padres. Everyone's making a big deal about the Padres, and they should, because a small market team is trying to chase down a big market team, and I give them a lot of respect. The problem is they can't play with the Dodgers because the bottom of their lineup is not strong enough to hit with this team. So, I mean, obviously, you're talking about Fernando Tatis. You're talking about Manny Machado. Manny Machado could be the best player in baseball. A lot of people are saying he is the best player in baseball. And, he's got some character issues off the field, whatever. We've heard some things about him, but Manny Machado is a beast. And Fernando Tatis, that left side of the infield is disgusting. I mean, there's just no other way to describe it. Those guys can play baseball. And then you got Eric Hosmer and Tommy Pham. Tommy Pham's going to be a big part of their success this year. I don't know if he has the ability to hit the baseball. Last year, he had a WAR, which is wins above replacement, of minus 0.01. So the Padres lost games by putting him on the field. We'll see if he steps up this year. And then you got Jake Cronenworth and Austin Nola at the bottom of the order. Jake Cronenworth finished second in the Rookie of the Year voting last year. I really like him, but he just doesn't have a lot of power. And like I said before, home runs and strikeouts win games. Austin Nola, not going to hit the ball great. He's a first baseman. But that's the problem with the Padres. Trent Grisham, Fernando Tatis, Manny Machado, Eric Hosmer at the top of the lineup. Those guys can hit, but the bottom order is really going to hurt them. You got their pitching. The pitching is good enough to shut down the Dodgers. They brought in Yu Darvish and Blake Snell this year. Blake Snell, we saw at Game 5 of the World Series last year. He can shut down the Dodgers as long as his coach doesn't take him off the mound, which we saw that. Kevin Cash, shout out to you for losing your city the World Series last year. But thank you for doing that because Dodgers won the title. So Darvish is projected for 227 strikeouts this year. Snell is projected for 188. The key guy in the Padres rotation is going to be Joe Musgrove. He came from Pittsburgh this year. He's a young guy. And, if he steps up, I think he's going to be very successful for the team, really help them. Then you got Drew Pomeranz closing games. His career has been revived in San Diego. He had a 1.45 ERA last year. Expect him to be pretty dominant again this year. But again, when you're dealing with the Dodgers and that's who you're trying to chase down, it's not going to be easy when you're going against a lineup that's hitting 217 home runs. So we'll move to the National League East really quickly here. The Mets are a really, really good team, but they're going to win with pitching. I mean, you got Jacob deGrom, man. Jacob deGrom, this guy can pitch. 264 strikeouts he's projected for. Back-to-back Cy Young trophies, 2018 and 2019. Tom Nappel, I see the question, is the complete rotation for the Mets legit? I think when they get Thor back in the lineup, Noah Syndergaard, I think they're going to be pretty legit. The question is, will it be too late? Now, Syndergaard's coming off Tommy John surgery. He'll be back supposedly in June. But yes, I think they're pretty legit. Once he gets in, you got Jacob deGrom, Carlos Carrasco, Marcus Stroman, who's getting in Twitter fights along with Noah Syndergaard, with Trevor Bauer over on the Dodgers. It's going to be a great year, but I think they are pretty legit, and they improved their closers this year as well. They got Edwin Diaz closing, and then they picked up Trevor May, who was the second best reliever on the market behind Liam Hendricks. So I think they're going to be really successful. The question for the offensive side for the Mets is, can they hit for average? We know they can hit for power, but they struggle with average, and they need to get on base. And another thing is, in the power category, they got one guy that's a dude. Won the home run derby a few years ago, Pete Alonso. He's supposed to hit 41 home runs this year. He needs to hit 41 home runs because he struggled very badly last year, and it cost the Mets in key situations of the game. And then, I mean, I don't want to jump over him. Frankie Lindor, the man, he is in New York. Like I said before, he was meant for a big market, and he is going to carry the Mets to an NL East title this year. And then their competition, those the Braves. And I think the Braves, like I said before, they're the baby Dodgers. They just don't do everything as well as the Dodgers. So I don't think they'll be able to beat them when we get down to the wire if they do face each other, but we will see. So you got the Dodgers, Ronald Acuna, Freddie Freeman, Marcell Osuna, Travis d'Arnaud, Ozzie Albies, Dansby Swanson, Austin Riley, Chris Pache. I mean, these guys are good. They're supposed to hit 208 home runs. The thing that's going to hurt the Braves this year is their pitching. And I know that sounds crazy. Okay, they got Max Fried. Max Fried went 7-0 last year. Charlie Morton, he's a stud. Ian Anderson, Drew Smyly, Mike Soroka when he gets healthy. But these guys are contact pitchers. And when you're facing the Mets hit for power. They don't hit for average. And I think that's going to make the difference and carry the Mets above them in the NL East. But when we're talking the Dodgers are loaded this year. The only team that can hurt the Dodgers is themselves. And if the Dodgers show up and they think they're the best team because they won the World Series last year and they don't take teams seriously, that's when they're going to get beat. But if they show up, they take care of business, Dave Roberts is coaching them up and everything, and they go to work every day, no one is going to stop them in the World Series. Yankees in 4, no way. Go Dodgers. Send it back over to Zach.
Yeah, thank you, Tanner. And I'll just say, as a Nationals fan, I'm feeling a little slighted they didn't even get a mention in there. They just picked up John Lester. They added some great offensive pieces. At the end of the day, I'm still high off that World Series that they had no business being in or winning, but they beat the Asterisks. We could call them the Astros, but you don't need to debate the team name. But they did it. They beat a team that was playing basically on a higher plane of technological understanding. So, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, a lot was well said. I just have a quick question for Griffin before we throw to Samir. Griffin, I know basketball and football are your specialties, but over-under on the Braves home runs. Do you agree with Tanner? 208? Can that happen? Griffey bet special?
I heard they were deadening the balls again to just kill the sport, so I don't know. I'd have to take the under.
All right, I like that. I like that very much. Now we're going to go to Samir Kumar, our resident Nets expert. You talk anything Nets. Samir has been at the game. Samir has lived the game. Samir has written 25 articles on the game. Samir is going to be talking to us about the Nets' recent addition of Blake Griffin. Once dunking over Kias, can now barely step over a turtle that stopped at a crosswalk. Let's hear what you got, Samir.
Well, first of all, I think Blake Griffin was just kind of not trying anymore at the end of his time in Detroit. He didn't want to be in Detroit anymore. He wanted to go to a situation and a big market, to kind of just move on with his career. He wanted to be in a winning situation. He was tired of being in Detroit. He was tired of being in a situation where it was just not going anywhere. And let's not forget, 2 years ago, he was on the All-NBA third team. It's easy to forget that. He's only 32 years old, about to be 32. His birthday is in a week, I think, or, 10 days or so. Within the next 10 days. Anyway, so it's not like he's an ancient dinosaur. So I think adding Blake Griffin to the Nets is going to open up their offense in so many different ways. You look at the numbers. Kyrie Irving's averaging over 50% of his made three-pointer attempts this year off of assists. And you're adding Blake Griffin, who's averaging around 4 assists per game. Let's not forget, in Detroit, he wasn't getting nearly as much playing time. He was sitting out games, and he wasn't as involved in their offense. They were kind of centering their offense around Jeremy Grant and some of the other young guys. So, Blake Griffin was still able to put up very respectable numbers in a limited role in Detroit. So let's voice him out. Let's say it out loud. He was averaging 12.3 points per game, 5.2 rebounds per game, and 3.9 assists per game. That's a pretty well-rounded stat line. Now, is it anywhere close to what he was doing with the Clippers or even with Detroit earlier on in his tenure there? No. He's definitely taken a step back, and injuries have had a lot to do with that. But now he's entering a situation in Brooklyn where he's kind of taking on the role of, the fourth option at best. And I don't even think he's going to be the fourth option. He's going to be coming off the bench as a small center, like Woj said, and as a small ball center, like Woj said, and kind of just trying to fill in the gaps in Brooklyn. He's going to try to get other players involved, like Kyrie Irving. He's going to look to find Kyrie behind the three-point line. He's going to try to get the other role players involved, like Bruce Brown. Let's not forget, Bruce Brown's averaging about 80% of his made field goals this season off of assists. And if you watch the games, Bruce Brown's very adept of getting to the rim off the ball, cutting there, and receiving the pass and just finding the ball down into the basket. So Bruce Brown's been very big for the Nets as a role player on both sides of the ball. And I think it'll be important for off the bench when Kevin Durant returns that Bruce Brown and Blake Griffin kind of form some sort of synergy there. And when you put Blake Griffin out on the floor with the big three, like I said before, it's going to look to get Kyrie involved, behind the three-point line. But then you got Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant has really this year taken a step back in terms of demanding touches for the ball, but he's still putting up nearly 30 points a game when he's been out there this year. Kevin Durant, he's proven that he can cut off the ball, dunk, or if you give him a pass in a sweet spot, hit the pull-up jumper, he's still going to get his. He's not going to have the ball in his hands nearly as much as he did with Oklahoma City, but Kevin Durant's used to taking a step back like he did with the Golden State Warriors and finding his offense, throughout the flow of the game, getting a pass instead of having the ball in his hands, isoing all the time and, dribbling through his legs a few times and, looking for his pull-up jumper. He's he's willing to take a step back and find his looks in rhythm. So I think he's going to continue to be willing to do that when he eventually returns to the lineup and really just bring this already great team. The Nets, don't forget, on their West Coast trip recently, they went 5-0 and they beat teams like the Suns, the Lakers, and the Clippers. And they did that all without Kevin Durant. So the fact that you're going to add eventually the second best player to LeBron James for the last 10 years or so back into the mix of things with the team that's already having a former MVP and one of the better point guards in the league, you add Blake Griffin, who's not far removed from his better days, someone that has shown that can take a lesser role and open up the offense with his passing and his ability to create his own shot. It's going to be a great fit for the Nets as they look to continue to play a smaller style of basketball and a faster style of basketball. That's why the Nets brought him in here. They wanted him to play small ball center and really just keep up the pace of play the 7 seconds or less offense that D'Antoni preached in his days in Phoenix and Houston, and how Steve Nash was successful in that offense in Houston. So the fact that they're tailoring their personnel to that style of play and really beating teams that are known for their defense like the Lakers on any given night just speaks volumes to how well this team is run, and overall just like the identity that they're looking to establish, which is moving the ball around and playing fast and, not necessarily being the best known team for their defense, but stepping up when they need to, getting into the opposing team's jersey and, clogging the lanes in certain situations to prevent layups from going in. There are times where defenses can easily penetrate inside and, expose some of their weaker defenders on their drives, like Russell Westbrook recently did during his time with the Washington Wizards, just a month or so ago. But that was when the Nets were still struggling to find their identity, and James Harden was out that game too. If you put James Harden in that game and how James Harden looks to involve all of his players, like Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, and DeAndre Jordan, then, the Nets would have won that game in Washington, but that's a meaningless regular season game at the end of the day. So how Blake Griffin kind of comes in and keeps this thing going, a lot of it's going to be his playmaking. He's going to be at the elbows a lot. He's going to be in the wing. He's going to be inside the paint. And, sometimes he'll attract double teams because defenses have to respect Blake Griffin for what he can provide out there with his shooting and his ability to find his open guys. So when he attracts those double teams, he's going to have plenty of options. He's going to have Kyrie. He's going to have Joe Harris. I haven't even mentioned Joe Harris yet. 50% three-point shooter. He's going to have Joe Harris out there. That's a huge weapon for him. Landry Shamet can get hot. And, if you get him in rhythm, he can be the difference maker in a certain game. He's capable of going for 20 to 30 points on a given night if you get him hot. So Nets have another weapon there. And I think Shamet playing off of Harden and Blake Griffin, will unlock some of the best performances for him moving forward for the rest of the season. Then don't forget about Nicholas Claxton. He has stepped up recently, especially that game against San Antonio. He is running the floor on both sides. He's using his soft touch around the rim to get nice layups inside or hook shots. He's using his arsenal and then hustling back on defense to block DeMar DeRozan. That's that youthful energy that the Nets needed, when they lost Jarrett Allen as their primary center. And, with DeAndre Jordan not being the same player, Claxton's needed to step up, and he's been doing just that. And adding Blake Griffin into that rotation is just going to keep things flowing. And if you can say Blake Griffin's like at worst, your fourth best player, you're doing something right, especially when you consider the fact that he's not far removed from his better days. So overall, I think this move was a great move for the Nets. And given what they have already accomplished this season, it's just going to continue as he gets familiar with the fabric of this team, they're just going to continue to march their way towards a championship. I think hands down, they're the favorites to come away with the championship come July. I believe it's in July this season. The Lakers and the Clippers are favorites to come out of the West. And I think the Nets match up very, very well with both LA teams. And, when you got Kevin Durant, LeBron James going at it, at this point of their careers, both of them pretty much cancel each other out. When you look at the rest of the Nets roster, you got two other superstars that can match up with Paul George and Anthony Davis, respectively, with their output on the offensive end. So when you look deep into that and the supporting cast that the Nets have out there, I think hands down they're coming out of the East. I don't see the Sixers beating them. I don't see the Bucks or the Heat. Or the Celtics. I don't see any of them beating the Nets in the Eastern Conference. It's going to come down to them getting to the finals and then seeing how the Lakers and Clippers, how healthy they are at that point of the year and how cohesive they look out there. So, like I said, I think Blake Griffin's going to be the perfect glue guy for this team moving forward.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see. Brooklyn is reunion city. Andre Robertson played with Kevin Durant in OKC, and Durant played with Jeff Green. Bruce Brown once played with Blake Griffin. Blake and DeAndre were part of Lob City. You got all these interesting duos that were once together now forming in Brooklyn. And LaMarcus Aldridge just became available. I doubt he's going to Brooklyn, but interesting to see if they decide that rather than go for Drummond, they just go for Aldridge right now. That is for another day. Folks, for those watching right now, you are here for the best part of the show. You thought you liked what you heard so far? Just you wait, because now we're about to shock 3 of the 5 panelists, myself and Dan, are not included. We know exactly what's coming. Our thinking caps have been on for weeks. Ladies and gentlemen, the debate topic, drum roll please, is tanking in the NBA. And as a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, I know all too well what it's like to watch a team that doesn't care for winning for a long stretch of time. So we're going to, with Tanner. Tanner, thoughts on tanking in the National Basketball Association?
Well, this isn't from the National Basketball Association, but you know Herm Edwards' speech, I believe it is.
Yes, of course.
You play to win the game, right?
Win the game.
You play to win the game. Tanking, we don't tank. We don't tank. You play to win the game. You got a contract. You got to win. That's the bottom line. In sports, you get fired if you don't win. Don't tank in the NBA. I'm not much of an NBA guy, but you play to win the game. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Griffin, tanking in the NBA. Obviously, for me, my team has been through a long process of tanking. You see what the Sixers did for years. They really have a name for it, the process, which is now Joel Embiid's nickname. He's trademarked it. But what are your thoughts on tanking? You can go NBA, NFL, but mostly basketball, because I think in that sport, you got a long season, you got veterans unhappy, you got midseason trades due to tanking. But what are your thoughts, Griffin?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, well, when you think of the NFL, tanking is much more absolute. You lose and you're going to get a better pick. The NBA, I think, does a good job with the lottery of trying to mitigate that. I can see both sides. If, you're clearly not going to make the playoffs, you might as well rest those veterans, get the young guys in. At worst, they're getting experience and, hopefully you lose more games, a better chance. I feel like the thing about the NBA is there's not the generational talent as much as there is with the NFL. There's, getting a top 10 pick in the NFL, you're almost guaranteed a difference maker. In the NBA, it does feel like more of a crapshoot. So I don't know, tank if you want to. I mean, I think if you're even thinking about that, it should just be more about getting your young guys experience. If you win, you win. If you lose, awesome. I don't know. As long as they're staying competitive, and I mean, all these guys are playing for contracts and other opportunities. So, I don't know. A little bit here, a little bit there. I mean, do what you have to do. I'm not against it, but I think the NBA sort of does a good job of mitigating, a lack of competition.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to look at. And for next week, by the way, we talk about Deshaun Watson. What's gonna happen there? Is Watson gonna get out, or the Texans gonna say we don't want you, even though they keep saying we want you? That's for next week. But yeah, and my main point for you, Griffin, is that the Pelicans weren't trying to lose. They decided to hold on to Anthony Davis during that season. They still wound up with Zion Williamson. So it is definitely a crapshoot. You never know what's gonna happen. But over to Dan. The team that closest resembles where you grew up, Minnesota. Now you're not there right now. Is the Timberwolves? They have 7 wins right now. They ended up with 2 number 1 picks, despite not playing for them because they traded Kevin Love for those guys, Wiggins and Bennett. They did decide to draft Johnny Flynn over Stephen Curry once upon a time. But anyway.
And Ricky Rubio, the 2 picks right before Curry. They drafted Shabazz Muhammad 1 pick before Giannis. You look through the Timberwolves trade draft history. It's ugly. It's bad. But at the same time, I'm going to take a little bit of a different stance on this one because I think there are times where a tank can be effective and utilized. And I know we've talked about you play to win the game. You don't want to incentivize losing. I get that. At the same time, you have to be able to have a fan base that is engaged, that is interested. One of the worst things that you can have as a franchise is fans who are unenthusiastic and lethargic about the team and almost in a way become jaded towards the team. That's kind of my approach to the Timberwolves is they've made the playoffs once since I was in middle school. So we'll just let that sink in for a moment. What am I now? 6-7 years removed from my college graduation, and they've made the playoffs once since I was in middle school. So when you get into it with the NBA and with my sport, with the NHL, where you have the draft lottery systems, that certainly makes tanking harder. But we have seen where tanking can be effective. Looking at baseball, where you see the Houston Astros, the Chicago Cubs, teams who moved on from some of their star players. It was a tough situation for them to be in fan-wise to see some of those star players go and to know, yeah, we're going to be bad for a couple of years, but by building from within, doing things the right way, sometimes franchises need that shakeup. If we look at a team in the NFL, for example, like the New York Jets, where they have so many problems all over the field, it's tough to just fix all of that in one offseason or in 2 off seasons. Instances like that, tanking for that draft position can be a good thing. We saw the Eagles in week 17 this year improve their draft stock. Griffey, I know you've got some thoughts on that one. Moving up to improve that draft stock. I think there are times it can be effective and done the right way. I mean, we saw it result in championships for Houston and for Chicago. And not only, cheating Astros aside, that team still, I think, would have won the World Series even without the cheating aspect to it. Tanner's probably got numbers on that could back that up. But I'm kind of on the side of tanking can at times be a necessary evil. That's kind of my stance on tanking.
Okay, and it's as evil as load management. I remember when load management wasn't even accepted as a term at first, and then you got all the memes with the laundry machine and whatnot. But we go to Samir, and then I will give my take, and then we'll see if anyone would like to debate anything that's been said. I mean, I know I have some thoughts on some things that I've heard, but Samir, as a Nets fan, there was an interesting period of a couple of years where Damari Carroll and Alan Crabb were your best players, but it turns out that not having first-round picks did not mean the Nets couldn't build something, as we've obviously seen now. But what are your thoughts on overall tanking in our favorite league, the NBA?
I think tanking is subjective. I think for the Brooklyn Nets, it actually worked out very well for them at the end of the day because it forced them to take on, bigger contracts, but in that, teams are willing to trade away like assets that they don't necessarily value as much as they once did. And in the Nets case, there's D'Angelo Russell coming from the Lakers to the Nets. And, the Nets were able to make D'Angelo Russell an all-star during his tenure in Brooklyn. So that's just one example of the Nets, being a team that was forced to not tank and kind of make moves around the margins and build a culture. And I kind of like what the Nets did in that approach by focusing on building a culture instead of tanking and, just trying to get the best pick possible. It worked out for the Nets at the end of the day, and they rebuilt much faster than a lot of teams, do generally when they tank. So, having said that, I think tanking is overrated. It's an overrated way of rebuilding. Like for a smaller market team, I would tank because no player is going to come and want to join your team. Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and whoever the Nets got, from their success off of that 2018-2019 season where they won 42 games with D'Angelo Russell, Karis LeVert, and Jared Allen. Their picks that they Karis LeVert and Jared Allen were both first-round picks that the Nets were able to get off of trades and whatnot. But at the end of the day, for a bigger market team, taking that approach where not tanking and kind of building a culture instead is much easier, because if you show any semblance of winning, players are going to want to join your team just based off of the fact that you're in a situation where that like it's a big market and you got the glamour of being in that big market. So that's where my tanking is subjective point comes into play. But now here is where I'm going with this fully. In terms of tanking, you can't tank forever. If the Milwaukee Bucks tanked forever, honestly, the Milwaukee Bucks, where they struck the most gold is when they made the playoffs, when they were the 8th seed in the Monte Ellis and Brandon Jennings era. They got Giannis Antetokounmpo with the 15th pick. So, it didn't take years of the Bucks completely bottoming out and building a team that's as good as they are today. So, that's just one example. Guess my ultimate point here is that tanking doesn't always lead to success down the road. You can get lucky like the Philadelphia 76ers did with getting Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, in a 3-year span with the first overall pick, but that doesn't always happen that way. Eventually you're going to have to start putting wins together and building off of the first pick or so in the, over the last couple of years and really start to build a culture. You're going to have to find the right head coach that, is keeping up with the modern day NBA, like the Nets did with Kenny Atkinson. Kenny Atkinson was able to find diamonds in the rough in D'Angelo Russell, Jared Allen, Karis LeVert, and then bring in veterans like Damari Carroll, and Jared Dudley, of course, and then just kind of build something, just build a successful team for that season. So, tanking has its place, I guess. If you want to bottom out and get the best possible pick, more power to you. But tanking doesn't solve everything. At the end of the day, it comes down to building the right culture and bringing in the right group of guys and, just building everything from within.
Yeah, just like go ahead, Griffin.
It's easy to say the Nets didn't need to rely on these high picks because they were too busy funneling all this talent to Boston for a few years to give them a nice decade of relevance. So, I mean, who knows what the Nets look like if, they were tanking whether they knew it or not. They had
worked out well for Boston too.
Oh, wait, no, they were not tanking whatsoever. I mean, they were not winning games, but tanking, no, they were bringing in veterans like Damari Carroll, Ed Davis, Jared Dudley, Alan Crabb. They were making these moves to bring in guys that could potentially become something in the NBA, guys who were afterthoughts. They were offering Otto Porter an offer sheet, and they were offering Tyler Johnson and Alan Crabb these big money offer sheets. But that was by design. Sean Marks knew that, by offering these players high money, contracts is going to play into the favor of agents as things move forward. So, Sean Marks also got lucky that those guys' contracts ended up getting matched by their respective teams. But when the Nets had a chance to tank for the first time in so long, heading into the 2019 season, I think what the difference there was actually why Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving ultimately picked Brooklyn over the Knicks is that the Nets looked like they were going somewhere with something. They looked like that they were building something sustainable for the long run. Yeah, Joey Buckets. They were able to find talent like Joe Harris, Spencer Dinwiddie. They were able to dip into the G League and find guys, that could end up being lottery picks if things, shaked out differently. But the Nets honestly found talent through the G League, through free agency, and through trades that ended up being worth the talent that they could have drafted in the first 5 or 10 picks or so. The Nets, they lost out on Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, but they also had the benefit of being in a big market to get Kevin Durant and Kyrie.
and
getting
get a lot
those
of
lower players on lower contracts. You have the cap room where you can go out and sign, strike when the iron is hot, and go out and bring in those big name free agents.
Exactly, Dan. I totally agree. Like if you are out there, not finding talent, around the margins in the right way, like the Nets did with Joe Harris, Spencer Dinwiddie, getting them for cheap, bringing in D'Angelo Russell on his rookie contract and getting all-star type of production from him, which is leading to wins, that's going to look good. That's going to attract, big name guys, and that's going to bring people in. So I think the Nets did it the right way, honestly. Tanking would have honestly made them look worse at the end of the day.
And then you know what they did is they did draft the guys that they did draft well. And I wish LeVert was still there. And I know one of your pieces early in the year was about Karras as the sixth man. Obviously, the Dinwiddie injury ended up changing a lot more than just the shooting guard position. But the Nets are in a great position, obviously, being so close to the stadium. I know, Samir, that going to games is going to be the equivalent of going to a Lakers game in Hollywood where you have this star power and these great players. So I think it's fantastic that the Nets are finally, when they're fully healthy for all 82 games, are going to become a 60-win team next year. So just being in our you and I's backyard, I think is great. And my overall stance on tanking is a little different. I just think at the end of the day, I look at Phoenix, Eric Bledsoe, 3 games in a couple of years ago saying, I don't want to be here. The benching of a healthy Tyson Chandler. There's instances where, and I get it, but there's sometimes where, like Durant last year not coming back, I totally get. Although when a guy is healthy enough to play and doesn't because the team isn't going anywhere, I don't like that, because I also think that NBA players have such a heavy influence on so many hoopers at all ages. Like we got 5-year-olds watching YouTube highlights. We got 8-year-olds going to their first game every single night, and to see a guy scratched because of rest or load management or just because they're trying to lose and they don't play, A, that's money down the drain, and B, I think it sets an example saying you can become so good that you just don't have to play anymore, and wins and losses don't matter. And draft picks matter. They really do matter. But a lot of basketball is tailored to the younger audiences. We saw football start streaming to Nickelodeon. All the best players had best be playing when they're on Nickelodeon, right? If Lakers versus Nets is on ESPN, but let's say there's like 2 games left in the season, and they're just resting guys either for playoffs or for a draft pick, it's like, oh, okay. What's the injury? Oh, didn't get enough sleep. Oh, didn't drink it. They just come up with these random excuses. That's point 1. Point 2, well, I mean, I mentioned it, but integrity, right? You as Herm Edwards, you play to win the game. You don't play to win 1 game or 2 games or 50 games. In a perfect world, you're the Golden State Warriors going 73-9 in 2015-16. You're playing your hearts out every night. By the way, they did that with their head coach missing for half the season with back problems, which probably makes it as impressive as the 72-10 Bulls. That could be a future debate. But
did they win?
They did not win because a better team from Cleveland won. But regular season wise,
a team that moved on from LeBron James, that stockpiled, they got 3 number 1 overall picks in 4 years, built that program back up, then traded for Kevin Love.
No, here's the thing. Without LeBron, the Cavs haven't made the playoffs in 24 years. LeBron's only played 11 years. That's 13 seasons down the drain. That's basically 13 seasons of tanking when they weren't trying to actively lose. This is the first season right now they're actually looking like something of a winner. And if they didn't have to play 5 or 6 games without a point guard, if they didn't have Andre Drummond making it a toxic environment, the fact that they're 14-22 is as impressive as any team with a good record right now, given that they've had 5 seasons. But back to tanking, and I do like that point, Dan. I appreciate that, is that it's just about you put the jersey on not to just sit and cheer your teammates on, unless you're the 13th man, that's fine. When you're a star, you should play all 82. I know it was LeBron's goal last year. I remember Jimmy Butler had made a bet with his trainer that he'd play all 82, and he did that. I just think that when you're healthy, you play, and that, yes, he's 36, but people talking, and look, this isn't tanking, this is about benching guys, but I think they go hand in hand. I think that LeBron getting praised for not missing a game until the last one is a joke, because it's like, oh, he's played every game, he's done what he's supposed to, and we're praising that? I mean, you need a sick day at work sometimes, I get that, and you need a personal day. But in the NBA, you have 82 days where people pay to watch you. 82 days out of 365. If you're healthy and you feel good, you should be playing 82 times out of those 365. I'll say that. And point number 3 is you never know what's going to happen. The draft is a crapshoot, as Griffin said, and we've all reiterated. I mean, the Pelicans didn't try and lose, and they got Zion. The Knicks tried to lose for years. I love R.J. Barrett. I really like R.J. Barrett. Like, he's on my fantasy team, so I want to get his shirt. I love watching him play. But he's no Zion or Ja. They tried to lose to get him. Every time it's like the Knicks are eyeing Lonzo Ball now. The Knicks are eyeing Victor Oladipo. I mean, some of these front offices think they can do so much more than they can, and then it's all smoke and mirrors till draft night, and then who knows what's happening. But you don't lose for picks. If you have a bad season, fine. If we're 70 games in and you haven't tanked at all and you say for 10 games, like this is end of a season, this isn't a team that's competitive. This is maybe a team that gets 30 or 40, 50% attendance, non-COVID season, right? Then it's like, okay, we want to see these young guys. What the Spurs did in the bubble is the only example I have of benching veterans working, because Aldridge wasn't there. Patty Mills barely played. So Keldon Johnson, who's shining now, got minutes, right? Lonnie Walker, who was only known for looking like The Weeknd with that, whatever you want to call, updo, turned out to be a sniper from 3. DeJounte Murray started racking in triple-doubles when he was kind of behind DeMar and LaMarcus. So that's the only situation I have where benching better players for young guys work, because it's happening now. But I'm all for it.
That's the backswing of the tank coming through.
That's the backs. Yes, and the Spurs didn't even tank to get them, which is what I'm like. You never know.
Okay.
The Spurs are an immaculate franchise. Greg Popovich's silver hair is actually blonde. He is just insane. He is a great coach. And at the end of the day, though, if I have to choose between going 35 and 47 or going 20 and 62 and a guarantee the first pick, I'll take 35 wins. Because as a fan, it is brutal to suffer through. I haven't missed a Cavs game yet this year, 36 games. They've lost 22 of them. It's been brutal.
Over a guaranteed 1 overall?
Yes. I mean, I love that player. But as a fan, I want wins. I don't want to be – I'm going to watch every game. If they're trying to lose, what's my incentive to watch? I think
why not a short-term – your team is losing, but then long-term you're winning because you got that quality player with the 1 overall pick.
That player's great to have, but A, they could get injured and not pan out. B, their development might be slow. You know, you never know. You can't bank on the number 1 pick being great. Anthony Bennett was horrible. Kwame Brown was horrible. Greg Oden was injured. That's only 3 examples, but that's 3 guys that teams had a bad season, chose to take them number 1, and look what came of them. You never know what's going to – I want a sure thing competitive team as a fan. I don't want the guaranteed pick. Look, I might sound crazy. You guys might all be laughing to yourselves, even though you're all keeping a straight face right now. I know you're probably all thinking, but at the end of the day, as a fan that loves good competition, I want to see how a team plays in the last 3 minutes of a tie game. The Cavs have beaten the Pistons, they've beaten the Nets, they've beaten the Sixers in these tight situations. 2 of those 3 teams are super teams, basically, that are going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals. The B teams, Sixers and Nets, probably. To see a team that could be losing on purpose to get Cade Cunningham, I'd rather see them win. They've got good pieces now. They don't need to tank. And every team's in a different spot. But I'll end with this, right? I'm a fan of a basketball team. When you're a fan, it's part of your identity. When you meet somebody at a bar or at a game or just at basketball, whatever you're doing, and you talk about your team, you know, it's fun to say, oh, did you catch that win? Oh, did you see that loss by 30 to that really bad team? I just think integrity matters. I think that when a player that's getting better is on a losing team, he doesn't know how to win. Why'd the Cavs trade Dion Waiters and all their other players when LeBron got there? And I read the book from Windhorst and McMenamin about the year. They weren't ready to win. They didn't have winning tendencies. You get rid of those tendencies when you tank, and I think that ultimately none of these great teams, like the Sixers, only have 2 players from the process left, probably because they're the only ones good enough to understand when you have to win versus when you're supposed to lose. So integrity, point 1. Point 2 is, you know, guys are going to stink when they have to play well if they're not. And with that, I open the floor if anyone's got any closing remarks before we wrap up and close out.
Yeah, I just think never tank. Culture wins games. If you got young guys or guys that shouldn't be there playing hard, that culture is going to translate over when you do get stars, and it's going to win games. And as a fan, you want to see a winning culture. You want to see a team that fights. So I'm not for tanking in any sport whatsoever.
Samir, Dan,
kind
Griffin?
of agree with you. I kind of agree with you there. Think culture matters at the end of the day. You can stockpile as many first-round picks as you want, as many top 5 picks as you want, but if you don't have the right culture in place, it's not going to go anywhere because coaching staffs matter, culture matters, and setting a precedent in terms of playing hard on every possession, playing for your team, and trying to win games is what's sustainable in the long run, because that's how you build chemistry and that's how you build an identity. I think that matters more in the long run. I'll also end with this. Dan, I know your Timberwolves, are struggling. I got love for Karl Anthony Towns because him and I
we
kind
don't
of come from the
deserve
same
Towns.
area. Anyway, I think you guys should try to win as many games as soon as possible, especially when D'Angelo Russell returns, with Anthony Davis being the first overall pick, because you have star talent to build around. You have a guy that's on a max contract that could demand a trade in the next couple of years if, things don't go well. He doesn't have the patience anymore to tank out games and hope for first picks or whatever, top 5 picks to come through and help change his franchise. You have a franchise player. You have a guy that's been an all-star recently, and you have a first overall pick. And you got a ton of talent surrounding the team, and Malik Beasley, Juan Hernan Gomez, so on and so forth. So, the culture's got to change now, for the second half of the year. You can't, go into the second half of the year with a tanking mindset. You got to go into a mindset where you got to, put wins together and see where it can go from there.
Yeah, I think with the Timberwolves, it's a little bit of a weird situation, and I don't know that I'm ever going to see eye to eye with you guys on tanking. I totally understand the argument, but I at least appreciate that we can come together on a Wednesday night and have a civil conversation about it too.
No question about that. Samir, Tanner, Griffin, Dan, everybody here said something that made us all smarter. This was not an example of Billy Madison getting up there and talking about the little puppy that lost its way, relating it to anything you like, and the goal of the Sports 2.0 show, everybody that comes on, we've all are passionate about what we think in our expert areas and obviously the debate area. And we're trying to share those viewpoints. So it's an honor to be able to MC this show with so many great voices. And for me, obviously, I get to talk about the Cavs. I get to take smart opinions and break down what's wrong with them. But, at the end of the day, Dan crushed it with his predictions. Griffey Bets is the only place I'm going for sports betting advice. There's no more passionate Nets fan than Samir, not even my brother who has season tickets. Shout out to Samir and Tanner, obviously, with the Dodgers. But, folks, we hope you enjoyed the first show. This has been the Sports 2.0 show. You find it on Periscope, on Facebook, on YouTube. We'll have all those specifics for you soon. But it has been an absolute pleasure. I'm Zach Weiss saying so long, and we'll see you again before too long.